Welcome back to Alchemical Astrology. I'm your Celestial Decoder, Melusine, with the full moon in Gemini report for December 7th, 2022. As I mentioned in the monthly transit report, this lunation doesn't promise to be a particularly harmonic configuration, what with Mars on a retrograding rampage in Gemini, conjunct by exact degree to the moon, which represents the will of the people and our collective emotional well-being. However, the moon will have the upper hand even if Mars is at its closest and most bright presentation, the likes of which won't be seen again until 2033. I say this because this potent martial energy will be severed by a lunar occultation right on the day the moon is full. All of Canada, most of US, northern Mexico, and Europe will be impacted directly by this energetic reset. What does this mean in human terms if we are to accept the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below? On a mundane level, it's safe to say the territories I've just listed will find themselves faced with a polarized population ready to land a punch when opinions differ on matters affecting the community at large. This will be most pronounced in America, as the Moon-Mars energy is meeting with the country's natal Mars. Very volatile, divisive viewpoints are sparking from coast to coast. The beauty of the sign of the twins is its capacity to see multiple perspectives on any given topic. The downside to Gemini is its tendency towards an indecisive, malleable mindset. Add Mars to this mix and you have short-tempered, confrontational conversations on the rise. The moon, however, eclipses this powder keg of emotion for nearly an hour, offering an opportunity to collectively revise our thinking processes in a fashion that is more amicable and conscientious. To find a remedy for any challenging celestial aspect, we first need to look at the placement of the ruling planet of the sign in question. In this case, we find Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, has literally ingressed into the cardinal Earth sign of Capricorn the day before the moon goes full. If ever this was an obvious answer to a dilemma, the stars have handed it to us on a silver plate. The moon, by the way, is associated with silver. To summarize this in layman's terms, I couldn't possibly do better than the ancient Greeks who said, "Dip your tongue into your brain before you speak." Mercury in Capricorn. Sensible, practical, grounded. This is advice we could all apply in the current situation no matter where you are in the world. The Sun and Venus are in the opposite sign of Sagittarius, shining their blessings on all those who take the high road, avoiding gossip and the ever-churning rumor mill. Another point to consider is the full moon at this moment is the culmination of the new moon in Gemini that presented on May 30th of the same year. Think back to that moment in time, which includes eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis, and contemplate how this full moon fits into your intentions seated in the spring. Have you released all that you needed to in the arena of communication, relationships, and resources? If not, the purge can continue in this framework, particularly in terms of how you integrate information. In addition, as my esteemed colleague and astrologer I hold in the highest regard, Gary P. Caton, so astutely pointed out, this Mars retrograde loop is retracing the spatial vicinity that Venus traversed when she retrograded in 2012. This serves as another point of reference to discover some lessons in personal dynamics that are being emphasized by the sky clock. Anyone who is seriously pursuing a study of astrology should purchase Gary's seminal work on Mercury that I have in my personal library and refer to regularly. I will put the link to his masterful publication in the show notes. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't include the fixed star alignment in this lunation, as it is monumental, in my opinion. I must admit that I am biased, based on the fact that I am also a practicing druid, and there was a ceremony performed for just this alignment of Mars opposing the Sun in placements in relation to Aldebaran and Antares. The last time this configuration presented was the year my son was born, and the alignment was also in December of 1990. The difference now is the eclipsing of Mars by the moon. Aldebaran and Antares are both royal stars in the fixed signs of Taurus and Scorpio, where we had the eclipses this year. They are two of the four royal stars considered guardians of the heavens. With respect to the Druidic component I'm referring to, a ritual known as one of the chief ceremonies called the Festival of Red Swords. It is speculated that this was performed as part of a covenant of Azatlan when Atlantis fell. Whether or not you subscribe to the notion that we are all suffering from a collective cellular memory of global cataclysm, described in some sacred texts as the Great Flood, the point of the original Festival of Swords was to bring warring factions to the table and allow for peaceful discourse. Pretty relevant right now based on global uprisings between authoritarian regimes and the masses, which is escalating rapidly in Brazil, China, and Iran. Speaking of swords, I will be adding an additional feature in my future reports that incorporates the tarot, as the two systems are intricately connected, and I will be offering a course demonstrating the indisputable parallels between tarot and astrology in the new year, so stay tuned for the announcement of the launch. As I mentioned in a previous report, the decans have a subsidiary planetary ruler for each of the 10 consecutive degrees of a sign. These divisions are also represented by the minor arcana cards. Air signs are represented by swords, interestingly enough. Already, the parallels are revealing themselves. The second decan of Gemini is ruled by Mars and is represented by the Nine of Swords. This picture of the rider-waite version of the card gives you a feel for the overall atmosphere. The individual depicted has their head cupped in their hands in an act of resignation, and a sense of overwhelm dominates the scene. All 9 swords lined up above the person's head could be readily interpreted as a burden too heavy to be borne without help. But help is available, since Venus is once again visible in the sky as evening star, and she is in the optimistic sign of the Archer, bringing cool comfort and calm waters to the terrain. Another ally in the crystal kingdom that serves to ease a troubled mind is Green Calcite, the stone associated with 16 degrees of Gemini. Anyone born between June the 5th and 7th would appreciate being gifted with this lovely calming stone of stabilizing frequency. Anyone born with a Gemini moon could call upon the Greek goddess Iris for assistance. She is, in fact, the female equivalent to Mercury in the Greek pantheon, as she too ushers souls who have crossed over back to their place among the stars. She is the master of pyrokinesis, using light from the rainbows she makes manifest to produce flames that ward off negative entities. The pitcher she carries is used to scoop water from the river Styx and carry it to the clouds and Mount Olympus. During the Trojan Wars, she assisted both parties fairly, advising Hector and Achilles equally. A veritable Olympian mediator, and her capacity to see both sides is precisely the characteristic most associated with Geminis. Her essence is very much reflected in the flower that bears her name. If you have any flower water or essential extracts from this plant, now would be the time to invite her into your personal rituals so you remain balanced and protected. Let's all embrace this attitude as we bid farewell to 2022 and the strife that touched our lives so deeply over the last 12 months. Until the next lunation, keep your eyes to the skies and your heart and your head connected.